that the new era of sustainability reporting for public companies is here, and the companies listed on the stock exchange would have to comply with the new global reporting guidelines. Earlier today at the NGX, the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria led the discussion on the readiness of local companies in adopting the new horizon.
Two major highlights of the roadmap report are the timelines for the adoption of the ISSB's IFRS S1 and S2, and also time frame for the assurance report. I'll go very straight into what the roadmap looks like. The roadmap tells us our approach towards adoption. It also tells us the timeline towards the adoption. The document highlights roadmap for seamless adoption and implementation of sustainability reporting standards in Nigeria, beginning with the ISSB's IFRS S1 and S2. Midwifed by the Adoption Readiness Working Group for Sustainability Reporting in Nigeria under the supervision of the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. The roadmap is in 4 phases. Phase 1 is for the early adopters. As you may be aware, some companies, especially companies listed on this exchange, have come forward to be early adopters for the year 2023, meaning that their reporting year will be 2024. And we hail this effort by companies like Dangote, companies like MTN, companies like Seplat, Fidelity Bank, and a host of other companies that have really come up to be early adopters so that it can be a model for all other companies championing sustainability practices and reporting in Nigeria. So that's phase 1 for early adopters. I know the one that may concern you here today are the voluntary adopters, which we have put in phase 2. Voluntary adoption of our sustainability standards will be from 2024 to 2026. It gives us a 2-year timeline to plan, to prepare, and to engage, and also for us as regulator to provide the needed guideline, the support structure, the support system that will be required towards mandatory adoption. So I'll go straight into the phase 3 of our adoption timeline, which is the mandatory adoption, which will begin in 2027. We give due recognition to companies listed on the exchange because we believe that the adoption of sustainability practices and report is connected to how we unlock capital flows. And we recognize that the people who need or who facilitate this even better are companies listed on the exchange. And that's why our first class of mandatory adoption will happen in 2027 with significant public interest entities, and by our definition, companies listed on the exchange. Other PIEs, other public interest entities, would have their mandatory adoption in 2028. And we are also beginning our plans to actually bring the SMEs in from 2020, and that remains flexible in that right. So that is for the preparers. I'll go very quickly into the adoption roadmap for the providers of assurance. It's also important that when we prepare this statement, we also prepare set of guidelines for those who provide assurance. The first category, of course, for early adopters, we are given the roadmap for limited assurance on S1 and S2 covering 2026 to 2027, while reasonable assurance will begin from 2028 into 2029 for the early adopters. Reasonable assurance of all disclosures, meaning full quantitative assurance, will span from 2030 to 2032. Phase 2 for voluntary adopters. Limited assurance of S1 and S2 disclosures, excluding the Scope 3 emissions, scenario analysis, and transition plan, will begin in 2027, while reasonable assurance will begin in 2029 for the providers of assurance. Reasonable assurance on all disclosures. Full quantitative assurance will span from 2031 into 2032. Phase 3 for the providers of assurance on mandatory adopters will begin their limited assurance of S1 and S2 from 2031 to 2032, while reasonable assurance will begin in 2032. Let me give you the principle upon this engagement will sit. Like I said, the work of the Adoption Readiness Working Group is done by providing us with a final draft document, which is the adoption roadmap. Today is the beginning of exposing that document. It becomes an exposure draft, and you are the first set of critical stakeholder group that we are meeting with. We're going to expose this document in the next 42 days, meaning that we critically require your feedback, your input, and because we believe that companies listed on the exchange are critical stakeholder towards the activities that we are driving, we'll be open to get your feedback and your input, and I can assure you that we will take it very, very seriously